Next, we have a discussion led by Katharina Schneider-Roos from Global Infrastructure Basel. You may have heard of Global Infrastructure Basel, or GIB, as they have led thinking in the sector of infrastructure around standards to improve sustainability and resilience. Katharina will speak about her SURE standard, led by GIB, and then we'll have a short period of time for questions and answers. Katharina?
Thank you, Darius. I thought when you said it's a very important day today, you would say it's only 5 days to go until you cannot comment on our public consultation anymore. So it's a very important day for us too. The public consultation on the SURE standard is open till September 12th. I thought I'd bring that first. But what is the SURE standard? I mentioned it before because at Global Infrastructure Basel, we have been working on the topic of sustainable and resilient infrastructure for the last 8 years. And we also think it's, we have, I think, a bit of a broader approach to what sustainability and resilience is and how it can be combined in one standard. Because we think it's also important to have the SDGs integrated in a standard that answers to a lot of questions with one standard. It's a stakeholder-driven standard, and it was a cooperation between Global Infrastructure Basel Foundation and the Natixis Investment Bank. It's a French investment bank, and it's a global voluntary standard. So it's not ISO, but it's also part of a standard family, which is called ISEAL. ISEAL is the umbrella organization of voluntary sustainability standards. You might know Fair Trade, or MSC, or FSC. They are all ISEAL standards. So ISEAL kind of certifies standards and has a set of codes you have to comply with to be an ISEAL member. So the idea was to bring together a lot of stakeholders to define a common language on an understanding on resilience sustainability. Because as we mentioned before, there are so many definitions of resilience and sustainability that we thought it's really important to have everyone's opinion on that. And it took us 3 years to have a consensus-based decision on these criteria. So it has been a very long process with a lot of stakeholders. And our focus is in emerging markets and developing countries. So that's also where we have tested the standard. And in our governance bodies, there's always representation from various regions. So it's aligned with the SDGs, as I've said. And as you can see, it's really a tool which you can use to answer to a lot of questions, because we think they are all interconnected. Mitigation, adaptation is part of it, but we have maybe a broader definition of resilience. I will go into details later, as we also have a lot of social aspects which we count as resilience. Others do too, but it's a strong combination there. But you can see we have a few themes that are actually really called resilience management, but there are other sub-themes that also relate to resilience topics, but also to sustainability thinking. So here you can see a bit who has been involved. We are the secretariat with Natixis, but there are 2 other governance bodies. One is the standard committee with 14 experts, and the other one is the stakeholder council with up to 30 members. So we have the Swiss government, the GIZ, city networks like ICLE, but also city representatives like Fortaleza, New Orleans, Truane. And we made sure to have a strong representation from development banks and private banks. also from different continents. So we have Santam Insurance from South Africa. We have the African Infrastructure Investment Managers, our India Integrated Infrastructure Finance Bank. So we have also local financing institutions. We thought it's very important to have them on board from the very beginning when we started to create those criteria to make sure the standard is applicable globally. Then you can see civil society representation. So we tried to have experts for all of these criteria in these governance bodies. There's the ILO and other, and also experts on certification, standardization. I showed this slide yesterday, so I'm not going to show it again. It should just, this is funny. It does different things here than there. What does it do there? Oh, that's the whole, okay. The standard responds to all of those frameworks. They have been integrated. And I think this makes it also like a one-stop shop for project owners on one side. They can answer a lot of questions concerning their projects from different frameworks or other organizations. We think that sure projects, if they are certified, they have mitigated a lot of risks. Craig was talking about, and it has been the big topic here, that risk mitigation has to be part of all these standards, but at the same time, Natixis, as you also mentioned, and which was also mentioned by Jessica in the morning, we also have, at the same time, benefit creation side of the standard. So by doing one certification, the project can show that it has mitigated risks, but it can also show where it created benefits for society and the environment. So it's also a communication tool for investors. These are the stages of certification. It's a third-party certified standard, which means we do not certify. We are the standard owners. So the project has to go through a certain assurance process. We've tested the standard in these countries. And now I would like to talk a bit about the cross-cutting topic of resilience. Maybe I have to say first that we apply the standard to any kind of infrastructure, any sector, and ask the adaptation and resilience questions to any specific project. So we don't separate them in mitigation projects and adaptation projects. So the same questions are asked to any project that is certified, which also means with the certification, we make sure that any sector or any project has thought about disaster risk prevention or resilience planning, emergency preparedness, risk management in general, but also occupational health and safety, public health and safety, which is also related to resilience, as we know, and also infrastructure interconnectivity and integration. It was also mentioned today, I think, by C40, that within a city especially, there's this cascade of risk. So you have, as an infrastructure project, you have to consider your relationship to another infrastructure project when it comes to disaster and climate change adaptation as such. We think there are common challenges to implementing resilient infrastructure solutions. It's insufficient funds, we've discussed that. Sometimes poor planning and project selection, because the selection criteria are not so clear. Maybe inefficient or ineffective delivery, inadequate maintenance. And we have seen with our pilot projects that there's very often the part of decommissioning is not considered. Here's just to see with the standard framework how we translated that on the project level. This was also not an easy exercise. So sure projects in that sense should be built better from the start. We come in the design phase. It should be built better with stakeholder participation, which is also a very important part when it comes to resilience. And they should anticipate shocks and stresses within design and operational practices, collaborate with interconnected services. They should be prepared for emergencies and have vulnerability assessments and actions. They should measure impacts and share data, promote good practice regionally and globally. So this is a very general approach, but it's important, I think, to have this integrated approach to projects. I'm not going to do the details of the problems I just mentioned. We talked about that, lack of public and private capacity, lack of quality standards, or the enforcement. I would like to point you to some more details of these SURE criteria we are covering. Resilience. I talked about the interconnectivity, but there should also be an anticipating and a design for climate, environmental shocks and stresses, social, man-made, or systematic hazards. There's stress testing, cooperation between actors for engagement and participation. It's really important because resilience can also mean different things to different actors. Who is the resilience for? Is it like for the slum dweller who is actually replaced or has to be resettled because of an infrastructure project? Who do we plan that resilience for? That's very important. And there's climate change adaptation. So we have planning for future climate conditions. For example, in India with the pilot project, when we test or assess a project, it can go to a very detailed assessment. For example, in India it was a railway line and the adjustment of the material to heat because it expands. In that case, they didn't plan for higher degree scenarios. So we can be give very practical advice on that. And then we are back at the public consultation. No. I would really want to invite you to comment on the standard, because it's a chance to actually create it with us. So I would highly appreciate your comments there so that we can change it and make it better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Katharina. I think you can see this on the board. You're invited up. Now this one is not showing what this one shows. So I'll tell you what the screen shows here, and you can write it down in your notebooks or your phones. It says www.gib-foundation.org. www.gibfoundation.org. And the reason I'm repeating it is because this is one of the leading examples of an organization that has taken it upon itself to set a standard for resilience and sustainability, something we all care about. And they have 5 days left on the public consultation, and we've got about 50 people in the room today. So each of you sitting in the airport lounge, flying back, please take the opportunity to fill out the public consultation, take a view on it, express your view online. It's a great opportunity. You will have done something for sustainability even while you're waiting for your flight.